For thousands of years this land was home. Great continents stretched, north to south. People lived here, generation after generation. They knew the mountains, the rivers, the plains. Their stories were woven into the very soil. This was their world, complete and ancient. A world teeming with life and spirit. Long before any European ships appeared on the horizon, many believed this land was empty. They called it a new world, waiting to be discovered by outsiders. But it was already found, already cherished. Millions of people lived across its expanse. They had cities, villages, and pathways. Their societies were complex and ordered. This was an old world, full of history. These first peoples were not one group. They were hundreds of distinct nations. Each had its own language, its own customs. Each had its own way of understanding life. From the icy north to the warm south. From the eastern forests to the western deserts. In the eastern woodlands, life was rich. Great forests covered the land. Tribes like the Iroquois and Cherokee lived here. They built villages of longhouses or wigwams. Farming was important, so was hunting. Rivers and lakes provided fish and travel routes. Their societies were often organized into confederacies. They held deep respect for the natural world. Out on the Great Plains, life was different. Vast grasslands stretched as far as eyes could see. Tribes like the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Pawnee roamed here. The bison, or buffalo, was central to their lives. They used every part of this magnificent animal. For food, for shelter, for tools, for clothing. Life was nomadic, following the great herds. The horse, arriving later, would transform their world. In the arid Southwest, ingenuity bloomed. Tribes like the Pueblo peoples, Hopi, and Zuni adapted. They built remarkable homes of adobe clay. Sometimes these were high on cliffs for protection. They were skilled farmers in a dry land. They grew maize, beans, and cotton using irrigation. Farming was a cornerstone for many tribes. They carefully selected and cultivated crops. Maize, beans, and squash were vital. These were often called the Three Sisters. Grown together, they helped each other thrive. Women often managed the fields and harvests. This work provided a stable food supply. Agriculture allowed for settled villages and larger populations. Hunting and gathering were also essential skills. Men typically hunted deer, elk, and smaller game. On the plains, the bison hunt was a communal effort. Every part of the animal was used respectfully. Women and children gathered wild plants, nuts, and berries. These resources supplemented their diet and provided medicines. There was a deep understanding of nature's gifts. Nothing was taken without thought or gratitude. Family and community formed the heart of life. Kinship ties were strong and complex. Elders were respected for their wisdom and experience. Children learned by watching and doing. Stories and traditions passed from one generation to the next. Decisions were often made by councils, seeking consensus. Then, tall ships appeared on the waters. Strange men arrived from across the great ocean. At first, there was often curiosity. Native peoples met them with caution, sometimes welcome. They traded furs and food for new goods. Metal tools, colorful beads, and cloth were novel. These early encounters were a mix of wonder and unease. Two vastly different worlds began to collide. Misunderstandings quickly arose between cultures. Languages were different, blocking clear communication. Customs and beliefs were often worlds apart. What one group saw as normal, another found strange. The Europeans had their own ideas about this land. They saw resources to claim, souls to convert. Native peoples saw a homeland to protect. These differences would soon lead to deep conflict. The concept of owning land was a major divide. For Native Americans, land was communal. It was for everyone to use, to share. It could not be bought or sold like a possession. Europeans believed in private land ownership. They drew lines on maps and claimed territories. This fundamental disagreement became a source of endless strife. Beyond weapons and different beliefs, another threat arrived. It was an invisible enemy carried by the Europeans. These were diseases unknown in the Americas: smallpox, measles, influenza, and whooping cough. Native peoples had no natural immunity to them. Their bodies had never encountered these sicknesses before. This made them incredibly vulnerable to infection. The consequences would be utterly catastrophic. These new diseases spread like wildfire. They traveled along trade routes, often ahead of settlers. Entire villages were ravaged in a short time. People fell ill quickly with high fevers and rashes. There were no traditional medicines that could help. The speed and severity were terrifying to witness. It seemed like a malevolent force was unleashed. a biological catastrophe on an unimaginable scale. The impact on native populations was devastating. Millions of people died across both continents. Some estimates suggest up to 90% perished. In many communities, whole generations were lost. Families were torn apart, social structures crumbled. The sheer scale of death is hard to comprehend. It was a demographic collapse of immense proportions. Faced with immense pressure, native peoples did not simply yield. Many chose to resist the loss of their lands and way of life. This resistance took many different forms. Some nations engaged in armed conflict, fighting bravely. Warriors defended their homes and families with courage. Figures like Tecumseh and Geronimo became legendary. They sought to unite tribes against the common threat. These wars were often brutal and fought against great odds. Other tribes pursued strategies of diplomacy and alliance. They tried to negotiate treaties with European powers. Sometimes they formed alliances with one European group, hoping to gain an advantage against another. This was a complex game of shifting loyalties. Native leaders showed great skill in these negotiations. However, treaties were frequently broken by the newcomers. Promises of peace and land were seldom kept for long. Adaptation was another crucial path for survival. Many native communities selectively adopted European tools. Metal pots, firearms, and horses changed daily life. Horses especially transformed plains cultures. Some individuals learned European languages and ways. They acted as intermediaries or sought education. This was a way to navigate the changing world. Through centuries of hardship, the first peoples endured. They faced disease, warfare, and forced removal. Their lands were taken, their cultures suppressed, yet their spirit was not extinguished. Resilience became a hallmark of their survival. They held on to their traditions in secret if needed. The stories, songs, and ceremonies lived on. This strength is a powerful testament to the human spirit. Today there is a vibrant movement of cultural preservation. Native communities are working to revive their languages. Many young people are learning the old ways. Traditional arts like pottery, weaving, and carving flourish. Powwows and gatherings celebrate cultural identity. Elders share their wisdom with new generations. This is a reclaiming of heritage, a source of pride. The echoes of the ancestors are growing stronger. Native American nations continue to exist today. Many are federally recognized sovereign nations. They have their own governments, laws, and institutions. They are working to improve economic conditions. They fight for their rights and for their lands. Education and healthcare are important focuses. They are active participants in modern society.